appropriate that we heard Dennis Green's post-game rant from Bears-Cardinals. That game was invoked yesterday. Adam Amin was saying the last time we were talking about this kind of comeback in a Bears game, it was right there, and it was not to be. But boy, did we not see that coming? Did we? I after all was said and done, I did not waste my time watching a Bears game yesterday.
Well, let's be careful about comparing those two comebacks too. I think we all know the difference in the eye test and everything that went into those. Sure. But certainly the second half provided you with a feeling like, oh boy, at least there's some sense of encouragement and some things that you can take forward that feel a little bit better than you felt the last few weeks. And you give this team credit for being fighters, right? Like they've shown that through 5 weeks now that they're a gritty group and they're going to be feisty. Now you got to get better players, and hopefully better players lead to more production and wins eventually.
Why was Justin Fields better, and in what ways was he better?
Yeah, Lawrence, I think you just saw more comfort in the pocket, right? And some of that's a byproduct that they protected better, that they picked up blitzes better, that they just gave him some space in there to operate. And once you sort of get that in your head, now you can focus on your reads and you can focus on your completions and you can go where you need to go with the ball without having to look out of your peripheral vision and figure out which guy you need to dodge and which guy you got to spin out of the back of the pocket on and do all those different things with the tuck and runs. And so, look, I highlighted on Twitter, one of the throws that I loved the most was on that first drive of the second half. It's a 3rd and 10 conversion to Cole Kmet. It just looked like real 2022 NFL football, right? It's nothing fancy, but it's a quarterback standing firm in the pocket, trusting that his offensive line is going to do their job. They pick up blitzers from both sides, and he throws a dart on the money to Kmet. You move the chains. You ultimately get a touchdown out of that series. Those are the types of things that then now create confidence in the entire group. And obviously for Justin to get a flow, right? 12 for 13 for 135 yards after halftime. That's the first flow that we've seen in him in 5 games.
Yeah, and he seems to be doing it with not a lot of help around him. The offensive line, I thought, played all right, and they gave him some clean pockets to work from. But on the outside, there's clearly still some issues with talent.
No question, Lawrence. And I was talking with someone this morning. The Bears spent so much time in training camp working situations, right? Here's what we do when we're in a 2-minute drill. Here are our rules. Here are the things we're going to do. Here are the things you need to do if you catch the ball, and where you are on the field dictates where you go with it. Well, guess who wasn't in training camp with the Bears? Ihmir Smith-Marsette, who was claimed off of waivers after the Vikings traded for a better receiver for their program and let him go. And the Bears claimed him because N'Keal Harry was headed for IR and they needed another body. And this is the ripple effect of being under-talented and then hurt, and then under-talented and hurt at the same time. And you force guys into roles that they shouldn't have, and then they make big mistakes. I mean, Dante Pettis, right? He's a May 12th free agency signing, right? That's usually not the date on the calendar where you acquire somebody that's going to be a big time difference maker for you. And so his continued issues catching the football are a problem. And eventually Justin has to have guys that are capable of making bigger plays than this current group that he has assembled.
Is N'Keal Harry going to be available Thursday night?
No idea, right? Like, we got to figure out what practice looks like this week. I would think that might be a little soon. Maybe, the storybook sets up right for a return against the Patriots the following week on Monday night. You got to get a feel for where he's at. Last week was his first time practicing. You've got to figure out conditioning. You got to figure out mastery of the offense. You got to figure out how those two things blend together. And in a short week, coaches often lean on what they know, even if it's not always the greatest thing that they know, rather than rolling the dice and taking a gamble. So I might think that this would take another week with N'Keal Harry.
Well, I also know that Velus Jones Jr.'s book of plays has to expand. That if this is the rare material guy among the targets, and I know he's an old 3rd-round pick, but that's not Dante Pettis. That's not Ihmir Smith-Marsette. That's somebody who could matter when the Bears are good. More. If you want to use him and say, maybe if you're going to err on the side of maybe this is a little much, fine. Overload him. Put him out there, because I care about what he's doing.
Yeah, I would just say that more for a rookie who missed as much time as he did can sometimes make a guy shut down, right? And now you get a guy playing with the wheels turning in his head rather than the wheels turning in his feet, right? And when Velus Jones has the wheels turning in his feet, it's special to watch, right? He has that explosion that the Bears want to have in their offensive playmakers. And so really good to see him, take that speed sweep yesterday and read his block well and make the cut inside of David Montgomery's block and get it to the end zone with some determination. And so you got to find little spots here and there I'd be very careful though at this stage of where he's at of resettling into things about overloading him to a point where now he's thinking more than reacting, because then you're going to slow him down too much.
The first half was really bad for the defense. They figured some things out in the second half. I know that you talked to those guys after the game. What were they most frustrated by?
Lawrence, I'm still trying to kind of interpret the specifics of what went wrong with their game plan for Justin Jefferson, because I think the frustration was, it's not like there was this guy who took them by surprise, who chewed them up, right? They spent the entire week saying 18, 18, 18. We've got to know where 18 is at. And Matt Eberflus kind of said after the game that the Vikings moved Justin Jefferson around, and it kind of limited the way they rolled coverage to him. You go back to that first drive, they didn't move him around at all. He started where he started, and they started the game by completing 4 passes to him on an opening touchdown drive, and the Bears just didn't have answers. Part of that is because Jalen Johnson is still nursing a quadriceps injury, and you've got an undrafted rookie in Jalen Jones trying to cover Justin Jefferson at times, and you're going to lose that matchup 99 times out of 100, and they lost it a fair amount yesterday. And look, guys, you go back through that first half, as ugly as that is to watch for the Bears defense, if you're watching an offense that runs similarly to what the Bears want to run with their offense, that was a symphony, man. What Kirk Cousins did back there in spreading the ball around and going down the field and having answers on every single play and doing what they did, it was really, really cool to rewatch this morning. It should probably be on the Bears teaching tape, because they need to find something that, I don't know how you guys feel, but if any Bears quarterback ever had the kind of half that Kirk Cousins had, the city would shut down for 3 days and there'd be a parade at the Petrillo Band Shell.
And I mean, yeah, like, look, he lit them up, and then they were able to fix it. That's been a theme from what we've seen from Matt Eberflus. What's his explanation for that? Like, why have they been able to adjust? And is he concerned that he has to do so much adjusting at half?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think some of yesterday was that the Vikings got a little bit complacent late in the half. They thought what you thought on your couch, that this was going to be a name your score game, right? And they were just going to be able to kind of get their jet lag behind them from London and romp all over the Bears. They took a premature exhale that I think allowed the Bears to get back in. And I think the Vikings made 3 special teams errors that let the Bears back in, starting with the shanked punt late in the first half that essentially gave the Bears a short field for their first touchdown drive. I do think that the Bears have what we've talked about for a month plus, just a mental and physical stamina to not get tired, right? And in the second half, that allows you to make more plays defensively when your opponent starts to get tired, and it keeps you around. And I don't think any of us would have seen a scenario where they had a 1-point lead in the fourth quarter of that game when it was 21-3, and the way they were playing on both sides of the ball. So credit those guys for kind of getting themselves back up and anchoring in and making enough plays to make it a game.
How is it possible that there was an incomplete pass that might have possibly been a fumble, and this team wasn't all over it as if it were possibly a fumble? It's mind-blowing to me that you can't have this supposed culture that they have and then again be standing around with the ball on the ground.
Yeah, I circled Nick Morrow and Jalen Jones as the chief offenders on that one. And you see Travis Gibson, coming from behind Kirk Cousins and pointing and going, get on that ball. Like we just experienced this a week ago, get on the ball. That's some of the stuff that's problematic, Dan, is these repeat mistakes that tell you that they're not correcting things. Another repeat mistake is the quarterback and the center not being with the same sort of mechanics on the silent count and how you trigger your center to snap you the ball. And when you want to go check a play, you have to not make abrupt movements that make him snap the ball prematurely. And so there's things there that you, when you're circling repeat mistakes, you say, man, they've got to figure out a way to make sure that if it happens once, it doesn't happen twice. And if it happens twice, it sure as heck better not happen the third time.
What did you think of Kyler Gordon's day?
I really appreciated the way he played in the second half, Lawrence. There were a few tackles he made in the open field that were really special, right? And being able to get out there in the open field and make those tackles to have gone through what he's been through over the last month and take his rookie lumps and really not show any signs of that. I think that's a promising thing. I know he's been a conversation piece for a lot of Bears fans over the first month, but this is exactly what you do in Matt Eberflus's philosophy is you get these guys a lot of experience, you allow them to work through some of that rookie adversity, and you hope in the long run it pays off for you. When you get your hand on even if it's a special teams play, you get your hand on a blocked field goal, all of a sudden it raises your internal momentum and your internal juice, and now you're able to play fast and free, and guys start responding to you. And so I think on the whole, I liked what I saw out of Kyler Gordon, even when we look down at his stat sheet that in the passing game is absolutely atrocious to look at.
I found it interesting what you said. It's so true about in a short week, coaches are much more likely to go with what they know.
Yeah.
And that can mean a lot of things. It can mean more of a sure thing in personnel, and it can also mean what their comfort zones are as far as coaching goes, which would mean for Eberflus it would be the defensive side of the ball. This is the first time he's been through a short week process. What do we know about how prepared he is and how prepared his staff is going to be to manage this for the first time?
One of the things that's interesting, Dan, is on Wednesday, they are planning to practice. And this is the first time in my time covering the league that a team is having an actual practice the day before a game. And Matt said it's going to be short, but it's going to be quick. And so that's an interesting sort of wrinkle to this week that there's going to be availability out there, but more significantly, there's going to be a practice the day before the game. And they're hoping to squeeze something out of that session that allows them to play sharper on Thursday night. We'll see where it goes. It's that's maybe not the sure thing that we were just talking about, but certainly worth keeping an eye on and maybe getting a better feel for the philosophy of that as we kind of navigate this week.
Dan, do we know if Lucas Patrick can snap the ball?
In like strength wise?
Yeah.
I think that he's at the point where he can snap the ball, right? And I think that had Cody Whitehair not gotten hurt, that change would have been made, right? But now you're talking about changing two positions rather than one, and so that's
but I feel like both positions are pretty bad. That you might be better off having him back at the position that you signed him for, and figuring out if there's someone else, whether in your building or out of your building, to play the guard spot. I know that can't happen this week, but I hope that with the extra time that they have, that's something that they explore.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, who is it, right? And that's part of the problem with this roster as a whole, right? Like if you're Luke Getsy and you're figuring all these things out in your offensive line, your receiving core, there's days you just stare at the roster and the depth chart and you go, man, I can't wait for this to look a little bit sharper. Like I can't wait to be designing plays for legitimate, number 2 and number 3 receivers in my offense rather than, trying to hope that Amir Smith-Marset overperforms, right? Or that Dante Pettis, on his third journey around the league, figures something out and becomes a contributor. And so, look, I think sometimes you're just stuck, and as it relates to the offensive line, I think in some capacity they're a little bit stuck right now.
Okay. What if anything should the Bears be worried about with Washington?
Yeah, I've got to dig deeper into them. I mean, certainly beatable, right? And it seems like Wentz is struggling and their offense isn't quite getting there. Really cool to see Brian Robinson Jr. get back on the field.
Yeah, that was a nice moment.
6 weeks later, right? And for him to be out there, I think he led them in rushing. And so before that incident happened where he got shot, like there was a lot of buzz coming out of Washington and how quickly he could be sort of a game changer in their running game. And so that's a guy you kind of want to get your eyes on and figure out. I got to be honest, Lawrence, I got to do a lot more of getting up to speed with the Commanders and figure out where the Bears go. I don't know how you guys feel overall, but you hope that there's some momentum offensively that can carry over for the Bears where you don't have to sit through another half, right? Like the Bears were outgained 307-95 in the first half yesterday. Like you don't see NFL games like that. And they've got to keep something like that from happening to them again, because that's not fun for anybody.
I would like to see something done with the defensive line. I know that there's no games that can be played that are going to make some of these guys more stout up front, right. But nothing is going to go well when those 4 gentlemen start out by being pushed backwards, and it's just happening too often.
No, you're right on that. And look, like they felt like they did a better job stopping the run yesterday. And like statistically, that's true. The Vikings averaged 3.8 per carry, but it was going to be improved if the 3 of us went out there, right? And tried to slow some guys down because of how historically bad they've been over the first 4 games. And so, who knows? Who knows what, this is what I mean. This is where the patience testing element for us on the outside is as much as it is on the inside, where we've got 3/4 of the season left and you're kind of just stuck with what you've got. And in some ways it's going to diminish because there's going to be more injuries at some point that depletes you even more. And then you've got to, test your depth and try to find answers. But that's just kind of what I think, we all thought that this was going to be the experience. And it's just as jarring as it is sometimes, it's just an acceptance of, okay, well, this is the 2022 Bears.